As I mentioned some time ago, I have very little free time, so I don't really have the motivation to make very long videos. It's not happening, not just because of the lack of time, but also because I don't really feel like making these videos. And simply to provide you with a clearer perspective, I think it was only after about 2 weeks, or perhaps even longer than that I eventually found the time to sit down and watch the specific video of Fox having a conversation with Magto Shadow. And I also took the opportunity and watched that interview he did with the Portuguese MG Tao. By the way, the guy is pretty witty. But I want to talk about the part with Meg Tao Shadow, because there's an alternative that's come up recently, which is the one Mag Tao Shadow is going for. It's the one Uncle Mag Tao is going for, which is the alternative of getting yourself a custom steady girl. Because basically this is the only type of viable and available relationship for the modern guy who is informed about the laws and about female nature. It's the only kind of relationship that can still offer some benefit and a certain degree of safety, getting yourself a steady girl and getting yourself a custom. But, as I even mentioned in the interview with Miktil Shadow, the thing about the custom is that obviously it's worth much more than just chasing after a random Pokemon every week on Tinder or, I don't know, some other app or something else, even if you usually go to bars and nightclubs. Although I think that with the way the Me Too movement has arrived here, maybe that's not really viable anymore in Brazil, just like it already happened abroad. But of course it's much more interesting than getting a steady girlfriend, than sticking with random hookups, because you can still have some emotional investment, as long as obviously the woman is also emotionally investing in the relationship. But the important thing is to make it very clear, right from the start, that you're not the kind of man to marry, you're not the kind of man to live together or have kids with. You're just a man for dating, and that's it, period. If the woman starts to nag you later, you have to cut it off. Because inevitably, she will do that. You have to understand that a woman behaves as if she were a property, as if she were a piece of land, as if she were something that the longer you keep it, the more it appreciates in value. But a woman is like a car. The longer you keep her, the more she depreciates and the more maintenance she requires. And the more expensive she becomes to maintain as well. Because that's basically how it is. The relationship starts off in a very casual, natural way where both sides are investing in the relationship, both sides are being rewarded. But you have to understand that the man only wants companionship and sex. He's getting everything he wants from the relationship right from the start. The woman isn't. Obviously, she also benefits from the companionship and sex, but the woman wants security, she wants provision. So, many current girlfriends or even steady custom partners can also fall into this category. There comes a point when just being a steady couple and doing some things together isn't enough. She starts wanting to pressure you to move in together. She starts wanting to pressure you about having children, even though you both have already talked before about not wanting to have kids. She starts to get upset because now she wants marriage, because she wants you to prove that you love her. And it can even go to other extremes where they start treating you like their dad or mom, just like Fox mentioned about one of his exes. He was already doing the job of going to her house on weekends so they could spend time together. And she started to nag him because she wanted him to do the housework at her place while he was there. I mean, it was his weekend, he was supposed to be resting, not at his own house where he could be cleaning his own place, but the woman wanted him while he was there, on the weekend resting at her house to help tidy up and clean her house. Do you get it? So, inevitably, your goals will no longer align with your fixed custom arrangement. And she will also start to change the contract, the relationship agreement, without consulting you first. And she will start demanding more and more, while offering you in return the same thing she offered at the beginning of the relationship, or even less. So obviously, is it possible to have a relationship with a custom? Yes, it is. Just like Happy Humble Hermit, he also made a video about this, where he said that every custom, every girlfriend he gets, after he became MG Tao, from the very beginning of the relationship, he knows that relationship is temporary. It will inevitably end because he is already informed about the current culture is about women's behavior. So he knows that when the woman starts to bother him or demand more than he's willing to give, the door is right there. You have to walk away. Last year I said, I think it was in the interview with Uncle Amgatao, that the most important skill men today need to develop is independence. Losing the fear of telling a woman, "I don't want this, the door is right there, leave," and having that awareness that there's nothing wrong with being alone, and that if a woman disappears from your life, others will come along later. That doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. But anyway, talking a bit about these customs, logically there are some benefits for the guy. If he's already had a vasectomy, he can ditch the condom, he can have better sex than he would if he were at risk. With the current rotation, who knows? How many times this situation could end up happening, or you could end up creating yet another single mother in society. But what we have to understand is that the custom is a temporary alternative. It's a temporary alternative, it's a survival tool for the guy who still can't let go of the biological woman. But for society as a whole, it's not an alternative. Because look, it's not a model that can be applied to all men if we want to have a functional society. The only model is patriarchy, there's no way around it. The last 100 years are there to prove it. This idea of egalitarianism, of men and women both working, studying, and thinking they're going to get married, have children, and maintain society, none of that works. Because while men don't abandon their side of the contract, which is to protect and provide, women suddenly decide to abandon their part of the contract, which would be to have children, take care of them, and raise them. Look, from the moment women became empowered and gained the opportunity to work and study, they started having fewer and fewer children, and now they've reached a point where they're refusing to have children at all. The pension system is collapsing, but their brains just don't make the connection that, hey, if I don't have children, there won't be any pension for me in the future. They don't care, they don't think about it. So there's no point. But that's exactly the issue. This kind of casual relationship, serial dating, and you start a relationship, you know it's going to end, you break up, move on with your life, and then you find the next one. This isn't viable for society as a whole. It's not an alternative, it's not something sustainable. Because with this method, inevitably we're going to keep having a lot of women left behind, not reproducing, and our birth rate is just going to keep going down the drain. And not only that, the guy who's more clueless, more careless, who hasn't had a vasectomy and isn't protecting himself, he could still end up falling for the trick, right? Like, oh honey, I forgot the pill didn't work, you know? Because look, when a woman is pressuring you to move to the next stage of the relationship, the so-called next stage, it's because she wants to move forward, but she's not really concerned. If you want to move to that stage, she didn't consult you before making that decision. A woman who is with you and wants to tie you down will do everything she can to try to trap you. And the way things are nowadays, there's an extra risk involved. Besides the risk of you ending up getting her pregnant and then facing her pressure and social pressure. For you to marry her and do the right thing. Here's my advice to any man here. If you get to that stage, fine. You pay child support for the kid and all, so you don't go to jail, but you tell the kid, look, this money is the only thing you're going to get from me. You had this child without consulting me. I will never be part of your life or this child's life. That's what a guy has to do. But the other issue, the extra risk that I'm going to talk about, is that often the guy is already cautious and the woman can't trap him with a pregnancy, can't pressure him into marriage or moving in together to end up with a marriage contract or a common law union right there in the middle of it. And then the woman would play games with the guy. And in recent years, the risk that has emerged is that from the moment a woman is denied, when you deny her something, marriage, a common law union, children, what do? They resort to false accusations, whether it's a false accusation of domestic violence, a false accusation of rape. It's like this. You rejected me, you denied me, now you're going to pay for it. Now I'm going to destroy your life. So there's that detail too. But anyway, that's how it is. There is the possibility of a custom, of a steady relationship, but you have to understand that it's something temporary. It's something where it's unlikely that any relationship will last beyond the first year. Maybe you can get accustomed with a longer consumption period, like for example MG Tao shadow, like Uncle MG Tao, where you're getting involved. A woman who already has kids, has already been married, is older, so her expectations are lower, right? Because they've already had kids, they've already been married, now they just want some company. So maybe that's where things fit, because the man just wants sex and company, and the woman also just wants sex and company. But again, this is a viable alternative. Only for older men, right? And who are willing to have sex with a woman over 35, maybe 40, a hot woman in her 40s and all that. But for the average man, who is younger, it's not viable to get a steady long-term partner. Because there are a bunch of young girls, young and extremely demanding when it comes to status. And they're even more messed up in the head because of feminism. So the chances of her making an accusation, the chances of her being a toxic and abusive partner are much higher. So maybe for a younger man, the thing is just to have a short-term steady partner, but that also depends on each man. Maybe some of them have no trouble at all finding a random casual hookup every month or every week, and it's possible to keep living that lifestyle. Maybe others still basically need to reserve someone, right? They need to assure the girl like, oh no, we're going to date, we're going to have a relationship. But still, after MG Tao, basically every relationship becomes temporary. It becomes temporary. Because your greatest commitment, your highest level of dedication is to yourself. And at any moment when any other relationship you have, whether with friends or with women, starts to harm you, starts to compromise the relationship you have with yourself, you cut that person out. Because your point of focus, your priority, is only you, and it has to be only you. That's it for this video.